Previously on the Yellowjackets.
I'm going to start with a question about the time between seasons 2 and 3. Did you have any big burning questions for Bart, Ashley, and Jonathan, just in terms of what happened during that period? So when you started episode 1 of season 3, you kind of knew where they needed to be.
I love that. I feel like I had a lot of questions, but I'm always afraid to ask them. So I just kind of fill them in for myself. But you actually ask your questions.
Sometimes. Sometimes I just sit with them myself. There were a couple of things I asked them about. One thing that I was curious about is like the shift, if there had been any, in like Van and Lottie's relationship. Because in season 2, like Van is like all about like Lottie's teachings and the belief system she's developed. And then at the start of season 3, Lottie's like sequestered off with Travis, and it really seems like there's been a sort of changing of the guard. It's like Van's not so fussed about that anymore. And there's in fact maybe like some disconnect there. So that was interesting. But it wasn't something that I wanted like resolved going in, because I was really interested in like what would happen going forward. Like especially since the shift between 2 and 3, to my mind, especially with Van, was really about like burying 2. Like it's like burying what happened in 2. Like that is over and don't think about it anymore. So the parts of season 3 that felt like a hard reset for Van, that felt helpful to me, because I'm like, well, no, she is really trying to achieve a hard reset for herself.
Burying it. That's a really good way to put it, and I feel it. I'm a nerd for like backstory details, and one thing I was especially curious with both of your characters is like this little like small council thing they have going on here. Do they have particular roles? Were they elected into those roles? Did the wilderness choose them? I'm busy obsessing over all of this.
Those are great questions. All I know is that Ty thinks she should be leading.
Yeah, totally. Ty is like a sort of assumed like a deputy position almost.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think like for Van, there's a lot of validation for her in fulfilling like an organizational role, where it's like, I don't want authority necessarily, but I want to be able to like tell everybody what the plan is. Like the speech at the beginning of this season is so much about setting the story straight for everyone. And I think her involvement in the council is in really trying to make sure that there's no cracks in the facade, you know. So Van's like supportive of Taissa when like she has questions about Natalie's leadership, but ultimately Van's not looking for there to be any conflict like anywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd fall into that role a little too much with conflict. Let's just all chill out and have fun and like eat our food and not spit in other people's food. Now I'm curious about their relationship together. What would you say is the biggest difference between, I guess, what they need from one another in season 3 versus past seasons?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, and it shifts over the course of the season, I would say.
I'm feeling.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. I think at the beginning, they, in different ways, need the same thing, which is for everything to be good.
Yeah.
And for everything to be light. But they go about that differently and then cling to it differently as the season goes on.
Yeah, and there's and that ends up like, I think that's a real ongoing thing in Van and Taissa's relationship that like becomes an issue for them over and over, or like their mismatched expectations. You know, like so often they realize they're not on the same page about something, but like don't quite know how to talk about it.
I just need them to have like a little levity. I just want them to live happily ever after.
Don't
I know it's so hard. All right, getting into some specifics. This one is for you, Liv. It comes from episode 3. I am just so curious about that dream scene, especially in terms of like what you need to know in order to play it right, given, as an audience member at least, we're not fully aware of what the reality of that is.
Yeah. You know, actually, I found the dream sequence largely intuitive. Like, it made sense to me that Van would return to the image of the cabin because Van is really seeking a sense of, like, safe home a lot. And I remember, like, Karen and I talked about this even filming the finale of season 2, that, like, Van comes from an unstable home environment even before they crash in the wilderness. So like, she clings to the cabin, she clings to the village. It's like, I'm going to find a safe environment, and if I can't find it, I'm going to create one, or so help me. So returning to the cabin made sense to me. fire is like a really strong recurring motif for Van, so like that made sense to me. Like the safety of home being like infringed upon, like the sense that like death keeps coming for her and then leaving her behind. Like those arms grabbing me in the chair, that's like Harvey, Laura Lee, Jackie. Like it's if you look at everybody's costumes, it's like the arms of our dead teammates. So like that all tracked for me. I was like, okay, yeah, pulling, like keeping you in the airplane chair, like pulling, grabbing you, taking you down, death returning and coming back. I was like, yep, great, makes sense to me. And then the shared sequence, the classroom stuff, I think there's a lot of interesting room there, wondering about like what the slap bracelet means and like to what extent the magic of the wilderness is like failing Van or like whether she's losing access to it. I don't know, it was cool. I liked it.
It's a good sequence, making the wheels in my head turn quite a bit. Jasmin, for you, this might be a moment that, like, I am overthinking, but I love me a good reaction shot. And the one for you I wanted to focus on was in episode 4, specifically when Van votes against Ben. I know that, you know, your character is essentially advocating for that in the trial, but when it cuts to you, it almost looks like she's a little disappointed. How does she feel, especially after he delivered that really convincing speech?
Wow, that's such a good question. I think conflicted. And I think that Ty's pride and need to be right and need to win and need to lead and have power means that she has to stick to her side. Mm-hmm. Like, even if in that moment she believes him, she can't say, okay, I'm wrong, let's save this man, because she can't admit that she's wrong. And so how that relates to Van, I think it's conflicting because it's like, wow, this person really loves me and is going to have my back, to the point that I'm pretty sure that she just went against her own self. Like, that's really intense, and I'm like a bit disappointed and a bit judging, but also like grateful.
Yeah.
That's complicated.
Oh, everything is so complicated.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you one last question that is not complicated, and I'm just curious to see your reaction. Okay. It's a Scream 7 question.
Okay.
In that movie, are you playing Mindy or are you playing Jasmin? I had a feeling that was going to be the reaction. I respect it. Can't tell me anything. It's all good.
I love that question.
Congratulations on this. Clearly, I'm obsessed.
You.